What's your speed philosophy? And we'll go from there.
Yeah, cool. All right. It's a good question. I suppose the biggest thing is making sure that we actually expose our athletes to running fast, and we get them to do it in an educated fashion. So making sure that they understand the principles of running fast well, so they know what sort of positions we want them to hit. So there's an education process there. Um, I think oftentimes social media can be a force for good, but sometimes it can muddy the waters a little bit. And I think people get caught up in trying to get fancy with exercises and drills and kind of lose sight of the fact that the most specific thing we can do for conditioning athletes to run fast and the most potent stimulus for improving sprint performance is actually sprinting. So I always prioritize the end goal of any speed session is to get the athlete to sprint fast. Um, an interesting thing that I've been thinking about a lot lately is some of the dogma that can be associated with speed training, and in particular, like the 90% rule or the 95% rule that I think gets touted a lot by all sorts of different coaches. And I think a lot of it probably comes from like the Charlie Francis philosophy. I'm probably not entirely sold on that. I think you can do a lot of really good work at 85% of max velocity. I think if you build a base there, you can build capacity, and you can condition the athletes to handle fast running there. You build a base, and then on top of that, you just layer in those little licks of really high intensity stuff, and you can take them those little steps further and further. 95% is a really nice rule when you're working with younger athletes who don't have long injury histories and probably a little more robust and resilient in terms of their ability to recover and bounce back from exercise and training. So I think you need to be really careful working with, particularly the athletes I work with, rugby league players. We play 26 weeks straight of the year, contact sport. Um,
Wow.
the guys get whacked, they get smashed, and the game is littered with short, high intensity efforts. It's sprints, sprint upon sprint. It's not uncommon for some positions to have 4, 5, 6 exposures to 90% plus of top speed in a game. So that can happen. So as the speed coach, come my day to be coaching, is more of that necessarily the right thing for them? Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's, hey, let's do a little bit of drilling, hit some positions, get strong in them, build capacity there, get a little bit of exposure to 80, 85%, and based on work really closely with our head of performance and sports scientists to make sure we've got a really clear understanding of each individual athlete's thresholds, what they're used to doing in terms of sprinting fast, what they've proven that they've been able to tolerate in the past. And hey, look, if you're up for it, yeah, let's get a 90, let's get a 95 out of you. But that's not always the case. So it's being really data informed in terms of our decision making and trying to be as individualized as possible and giving each guy what they need at the right time. I suppose, I don't know if that's my philosophy around speed, but that's probably the big considerations that I tend to think about week to week when trying to program for my players.
I like what you said there. Like, hey, maybe there is a benefit to building a base at that 80%. Where did you stumble upon that?
Um, to be honest, it's probably a recent sort of thought that I've started to really latch onto. It's probably something that's happened a lot in the past, just by chance. Like you get you guys to do build-ups. They're doing stride throughs. We're doing some 20s, some 30s. We're just opening up, working through the gears. Before you realise it, you're actually getting quite a few reps there across the course of a season, where they're essentially warming themselves up and getting the feeling for feeling good. And I think that lays a foundation for any faster stuff that you're going to do in a session. But it was actually Jonas Dodu. I went to a presentation with him recently, and I think he was probably the first person to sort of hit the nail on the head in terms of saying that the 90% rule is dogmatic. It doesn't mean it's wrong. If you want to get faster, obviously 90 plus, 95% and above is where you're going to have the stimulus that drives the adaptations that improve you. But to say that all speed work needs to be above 90% or it's a complete waste of time, I think that's where I kind of thought, you know what, I think you've got a really good point to make there. And like if we start a preseason, athletes coming in off who knows what they've been doing, they've been in Bali on holidays, like they haven't been training. So we've got to make sure that they earn the right to run really fast, right? So that comes through building a base. And in the same way that you would, like, you're not going to walk into the gym and, all right, lads, our training program is heavy singles from day one. Yeah, maybe you do a test of some description to understand where they're at. Like we speed test day one, we do some 1RM testing day one, but we make sure the athletes are prepared for that, good warm up and all that. But that doesn't mean that we then just keep going and one RMing over and over and over again. It's a training program that has progressive overload. We know where you start, build a foundation, build a base. That can be some high knee cycle bleeds. Let's build them out over 40 meters, working on good mechanics, getting a good cycle, striking the ground hard from above, good foot contacts, and let's build you up so that those bleeds are finishing at around 85% of max velocity. Let's get reps there. Let's work on getting strong in those positions, build a base, layer that capacity with a little bit of intensity in 3-4 weeks when they've earned the right to do it.
I couldn't agree with you more. First of all, that's why I kept nodding my head. Because, like you said, there's so many times where, like exactly your case with the maxing out right away in the weight room. We don't do that, so why would you do that on the field? My question is, what do you do to limit how fast they run on the field? Are you putting an implement on their hand? You shortening the distance? What do you do?
Yeah, definitely constraints are a really powerful tool. So in an ideal world, and there are definitely athletes you can do this with, we just ask them to work subjectively at the intensity we're looking for.
How nice
and
is
some
that,
of
right?
them,
When they can
some
actually
of them,
do that.
not all of them, some of them are smart enough to do that. And working with a group for long enough, like I know which guys I can trust. There's like we've got a squad of 30 blokes. There's probably 10 blokes that I'm like, if I ask you to give me 80%, I'm going to get 80% out of you. I've got some guys that I ask them to do 60%, and they're going for a PB. So for those guys, that's where constraints come into it. One of the best constraints that I can use is get the football in their hands, because it actually makes them feel like it's even more specific. Like, oh, how good is this? Nate's got the footy in my hands today. This is super specific. He's trying to help me work on running with the ball. It's like, no, you dumb. I want you to slow down. So that can be a really useful tool. That doesn't always work. Some guys, I'll tuck it under one wing and they're still visualizing trying to run the length of the field to score a try. So then we'll start working on other constraints. So if we can constrain the arm action, we can use a dowel rod, a broomstick on the back. We can just take their arm action out of it by going hands on hips or arms across the chest. Those are good constraints as well. And then the other constraint that I'll often use is the wickets. Probably gone away from it a little bit this season, I suppose. Just, I feel like we've been able to get out of the athletes what we want with those other constraints, and potentially without wasting time setting up a bunch of hurdles. I don't know if that's being lazy or being efficient, but if I'm getting out of the athlete what I need, if the player is able to produce the 85% that I wanted, then the constraint worked. So broomstick runs, ball in hand, they're typically the tools that I'm using, and they're generally working pretty well.
Congratulations on making it to the end of the video. Why don't you celebrate by watching more videos just like it? You can also help us on our quest to placate the algorithm gods by liking, sharing, subscribing, and commenting. Thank you.